The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates.
Hello and welcome back to Dave and Mackie's Shiny Side Out on Revolution Radio. That's right, listener funded, in fact, which means that your purse strings allow us to succeed. So if you can donate, that would be awesome. It'd be even better if you could subscribe and access the Freedom Slips archives that way. $5, that's all it takes. Or get some of the awesome merch. If you go to the homepage, you'll find this really, really great stuff. From seat packs to t-shirts, etc., etc. Anything that you might want or need. And if you want to buy our merch, we're on Zazzle. The Shiny Side Out is on Zazzle. Buy a cup, buy a t-shirt, buy a hoodie, and be recognized as an SSO listener by other SSO listeners, Shiny Side Out. But yes, so if you can, that would be fantastic. Which brings us to the second hour of show number 472, 270, 100. 472 shows. I don't know. 10 years ago, 11 years ago now, almost, I think. Dave called me, hey, Mackie, you want to be on the radio? Sure, why not? I reckon we make it to maybe 2 or 3 shows we'll do. That's it. Well, and we have nothing left to talk about. Not so, it turns out. Not so at all, which is good, hopefully, for you. But ultimately, we are still here and still going strong. And I do hope that everybody out there is enjoying the information we're bringing you. And look, this show cycle is, again, I thought it was timely we talk about biological warfare and what it means and how it works, etc., etc. What has happened before, and then how it relates to what we're experiencing today. Because I do believe that what we're experiencing today is very much biological warfare. Okay, it's up to visit upon us. I don't think this is done by a nation player state, but rather, if there were a nation state player involved, they would be a stooge. I think this goes much deeper and much higher than the US, China, Russia, whatever, India, Brazil. It's well even forget the UN. This is well beyond that level of playing field. This is a level of playing field that's quite elevated from that, and you will never see the players. No one ever sees the players. We know about them. We hear about them. There are rumors and things like that. But that's what I think is happening here. But let us look here for a second at biological warfare. Also known as germ warfare is the use of biological toxins or infectious agents such as bacteria, viruses, and fungi with intent to kill or incapacitate humans, animals, or plants as an act of war. Biological weapons, often termed bioweapons, biological threat agents, or bioagents, are living organisms or replicating entities, such as viruses, which are not really considered alive, by the way, that reproduce or replicate within their host victims. Entomological, which is insect warfare, is also considered a type of biological weapon. This type of warfare is distinct from nuclear warfare and chemical warfare, which together make up NBC, the military acronym for nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare or weapons, all of which are considered weapons of mass destruction, the infamous WMDs. Now, none of these fall under the term conventional weapons, which are primarily effective due to their destructive potential. Biological weapons may be employed in various ways to gain a strategic or tactical advantage over the enemy, either by threats or by actual deployments. Like some of the chemical weapons, biological weapons may also be useful as area denial weapons, meaning you deploy it and that area becomes uninhabitable. These agents may be lethal or non-lethal and may be targeted against a single individual, a group of people, or even an entire population. They may be developed, acquired, stockpiled, or deployed by nation states or by non-national groups. In the latter case, or if a nation state uses it clandestinely, it may also be considered bioterrorism. And make no mistake, biological warfare gives you your biggest bang for your buck. By far. And because of its relative simplicity and because it does occur in nature, I mean, Ebola, Marburg, etc., etc. These are all viruses that exist in nature. You don't have to make them, right? So, if you're half clever, you can get yourself a stockpile of viruses or other agents and start, or bacterial agents as well, and start some kind of disease, some kind of global pandemic. So this form of warfare can be executed by very small groups or even individuals, right? And the more highly educated, of course, the more highly effective this attack would be. So if you are a microbiologist that specializes in these kinds of infectious agents, deadly agents, then your threat potential is quite high. Quite high. There's an overlap between biological weapons and chemical warfare, as the use of toxins produced by living organisms is considered under the provisions of both the Biological Weapons Convention and the Chemical Weapons Convention. Toxins and psychochemical weapons are often referred to as mid-spectrum agents. Unlike bioweapons, these mid-spectrum agents do not reproduce in their host, right? So toxins that are released by these bacterial or viral agents potentially are not there to reproduce, but just to kill or maim or incapacitate, whatever it might be. Now, let's look at the Wuhan coronavirus. You might have heard of it, or have you? Officially, as of February 2nd, 2010. More than 300 people have died in the outbreak so far, the vast majority from Hubei, and more than 15,000 people worldwide have been infected. But a study group of scientists in Hong Kong have modeled the outbreak with data available at this time and have come up with figures that are significantly different from the official figures. Okay. Now, what are coronaviruses? Coronaviruses are a large group of viruses that are common among animals. In rare cases, they can be transmitted from animals to humans. The spikes protruding from the virus's membrane look like the sun's corona, hence the name coronavirus. It causes illnesses of the respiratory tract, the breathing system, ranging from the common cold to severe conditions like SARS. According to the World Health Organization, WHO, a novel coronavirus is a new strain that has not been previously identified in humans. Now, to be very clear, this is something interesting I heard, but maybe I read rather 2 or 3 weeks ago. This is the coronavirus and rhinovirus interaction, and I do want to quickly mention it. I mentioned it before, but this is important. So coronaviruses are a whole group of viruses. It's a massive group of viruses, and SARS-CoV-2 is just one of them, right? The flu virus is in there as well, others. The rhinovirus, which is the virus that causes the common cold, seems to completely inhibit the ability of SARS-CoV-2 to infect the host. So if you have the common cold, right, like if you've got the rhinovirus, chances are you cannot get infected by SARS-CoV-2. It was done, this is a small study group out of the UK, and then their field of expertise is studying the interaction of viruses, which is fascinating stuff. And it was a bit of a fringe field, clearly now very much moved to the front and center of the debate. But think about that for a second, right? If you have the rhinovirus in your system, so if you're infected with the rhinovirus, then SARS-CoV-2 will find it very difficult to find a foothold in your body. And do you know what else is true? Who do you think has got the highest incidence of rhinovirus in their system, in the human population? Now, the answer, as I said last week as well, is children. Children have the highest incidence. That explains, at least in part, why children seem to be so unaffected, I want to say, or less affected by SARS-CoV-2 than anyone else. Okay, the rhinovirus. I'm hoping that this line of research is going to take it further, and hey, maybe the answer is that we all have to get the common cold all the time to completely eradicate SARS-CoV-2. Because they actually did those tests with some degree of confidence and detail, and each time they put these two cultures together, SARS-CoV-2 would just stop functioning. So watch the space for the rhinovirus. Okay, now this is an article from the beginning of 2020. Okay, I want you to cast your mind back to the beginning of February 2020. The real number of coronavirus cases is more than 75,000, according to a scientific model that says the outbreak will double in size every 6.4 days. This was written by 𝐫𝐞𝐯𝐨𝐥𝐮𝐭𝐢𝐨𝐧, February 1, 2020. The true number of people infected with the deadly Wuhan coronavirus is more than 75,000, according to a scientific model, which claims the official number for those infected is far too low. This is when coronavirus was largely a Chinese problem still. Academics at the University of Hong Kong published a paper on Friday in The Lancet, a prestigious medical journal, estimating the rate at which the virus is spreading. It used official data on the number of infections to calculate what is said was the true extent of the disease, almost 100 times the official figures. Underpinning the analysis is the idea that the number of international cases is disproportionately high given the number of people who travel from Wuhan to other countries. The academics used the international figures to reverse engineer a total for the number of cases among Greater Wuhan's population of around 19 million. They said that as of January 25, they estimated that the number of cases was 75,815. According to CNN, the official total on January 25 for the whole of Hubei province, which includes Greater Wuhan, was 761, barely 1% of the total projected by the scientists. The paper is not the first to suggest that the official figures do not adequately capture the scope of the outbreak. A paper from Imperial College London, published on January 17, suggested that the figures were too low by a factor of 35. As part of their model, the Hong Kong academics predicted the scale of the virus would double every 6.4 days. By that logic, the number of people in Greater Wuhan with the virus as of this Friday, January 31, would be 150,630. The official number of cases on January 31 was less than 10,000. The number increased to around 12,000 as of February 1 local time. The authors of the study said they had taken into account the effect of the dramatic lockdown imposed on Wuhan and surrounding cities last week. Remember, that was back beginning of 2020. However, they said that its overall effectiveness would be negligible, given that a critical mass of cases had already been observed in several other cities. That was the beginning. That was the beginning. And I've got the actual study from The Lancet here. Background summary. Since December 31, 2019, the Chinese city of Wuhan has reported an outbreak of atypical pneumonia caused by the 2019 novel coronavirus, 2019 nCoV. Cases have been exported to other Chinese cities, as well as internationally, threatening to trigger global outbreak. Here, we provide an estimate of the size of the epidemic in Wuhan on the basis of the number of cases exported from Wuhan to cities outside mainland China, and forecast the extent of the domestic and global public health risks of epidemics, accounting for social and non-pharmaceutical prevention interventions. Methods. We use data from December 31, 2019 to January 28, 2020 on the number of cases exported from Wuhan internationally. Known days of symptom onset from December 25, 2019 to January 19, 2020. To infer the number of infections in Wuhan from December 1, 2019 to January 25, 2020. Cases exported domestically were then estimated. We forecasted the national and global spread of 2000 nCoV, accounting for the effect of the metropolitan-wide quarantine of Wuhan and surrounding cities, which began January 24, 2020. We used data on monthly flight bookings from the official aviation guide and data on human mobility across more than 300 prefecture-level cities in mainland China from the Tencent database. Data on confirmed cases were obtained from the reports published by the Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Serial interval estimates were based on previous studies of severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus, SARS-CoV. Now, obviously, our disease here is now SARS-CoV-2. A susceptible exposed infectious recovered metapopulation model was used to simulate the epidemics across all major cities in China. The basic reproduction number was estimated using Markov chain Monte Carlo methods and presented using the resulting posterior mean and 95% credible interval. These are the findings. In our baseline scenario, we estimated that the basic reproductive number for 2019 nCoV was 2.68, and that 75,000 individuals have been infected in Wuhan as of January 25, 2020. The epidemic doubling time was 6.4 days. We estimated that in the baseline scenario, Chongqing, Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Shenzhen had imported 461, 113, 111, and 80 infections respectively from Wuhan. If the transmissibility of 2019 nCoV were similar everywhere domestically and over time, we inferred that epidemics are already growing exponentially in multiple major cities in China, with a lag time behind the Wuhan outbreak of about 1 to 2 weeks. Interpretation. Given that 2019 nCoV is no longer contained within Wuhan, other major Chinese cities are probably sustaining localized outbreaks. Large cities overseas with close transport links to China could also become outbreak epicenters, unless substantial public health interventions at both the population and personal levels are implemented immediately. Independent self-sustaining outbreaks in major cities globally could become inevitable because of substantial exportation of pre-symptomatic cases and in the absence of large-scale public health interventions. Preparedness plans and mitigation interventions should be readied for quick deployment globally. The funding came from the Health and Medical Research Fund in Hong Kong, China. Just to be very clear, this was at the beginning of 2020. Right, February 1, 2020, the article was published, and the study itself was published in January of 2020. Back then, scientists were telling us, hey, you better step up and do something here, right? Now I'll give you the update. So again, let me just go back to the top of the article. The real number of coronavirus cases is more than 75,000, according to a scientific model that says the outbreak will double in size every 6.4 days. That was in February of 2020. Okay, they estimated. So the official number was nowhere near that. Okay, the official number was like, I think, 7,000 or thereabouts. All right, 75,000, they estimated was the real number. This is the update from March 29th, 2021, last week. Coronavirus cases globally, 126,852,304. Deaths, 2,782,183. Recovered, even counting in long COVID, 102,270,025. Active cases at the moment, or as of March 31st, were 21,800,096. And cases which had an outcome were 105,052,208, with a 3% case fatality rate of 2,782,183. So these are the official numbers, okay, the figures. And if I look at my worldometer, the number of deaths today, 4 days on, is 2,859,309. Okay, which is, what do we have here? Yeah, which is another 100,000 people in the last 4 days, or so, which is quite a sobering statistic. Yeah, it's well, actually it's more like 70,000 extra people that passed from the 29th of March. So we're talking like about 5 days or 6 days here. Okay, so within a year, we've gone from Wuhan being locked down and scientists sounding the alarm bell, hey, this is something that is not quite right, to a completely runaway kind of pandemic. Again, I say plandemic now, because I think that's what it is. And if you look at the profile of the disease, there was a bit of a dip throughout March, beginning of March, which was great. Less infections, less people dying, or at least as far as the tests could find out. But now, the end of March, beginning of April, have seen a sharp rise, a spike, if you will, in global infections as well as death rates. Significant spike. We dropped down to 300,000 infections, end of February, and then right back up to just April 1. We had 700,000 infections, that the testing found. Same with death. Beginning of February, we're down to 8,000. It's back to 11,000. So it's dipped up again. And that's with vaccinations being handed out. Again, vaccinations are a double-edged sword. Everybody has to make up their own mind, but they will not protect you from infection. They will most likely make sure that you don't get as sick, and you probably will not die if you are vaccinated, right? But they will not protect you from contracting the disease or passing it on. We need to be clear, but this is not a silver bullet, and we don't seem to be able to get herd immunity going if Manaus, the city in Brazil I spoke to in the first hour, is any indication. So we have to be vigilant still. Okay, and the way this thing mutates is also a bit of a worry. I think it's the mutations are coming hard and fast, and I think that's because it's so infectious and has so many hosts. It's simple biology. The larger your sample population is, right? In this case, several tens of millions of people. We've got 130 million people that we know are infected. The number is probably 4 to 6 times higher by the official estimates, because we can't test everybody. We only know the people that are tested. But by now, I think well above 500-600 million people have been infected with this thing. And it makes sense that it mutates so quickly because there's so many hosts, there's so many potential variants that are out there, and crossbreed potentially, right, as well. So I'm not surprised it's mutating as quickly as it does. What does surprise me is that each mutation makes it worse, more infectious or more deadly. Mutations are random, and not all mutations should be mutations that make this virus worse. They shouldn't be, but they are. So you can read into that whatever you like. That's my opinion. But what is long COVID? The effects of long COVID and other disturbing effects. So long COVID is something that has emerged in people that have survived a COVID infection. And not always a bad one either. It could be a fairly mild COVID infection. But the long COVID symptoms still appear, even if you weren't as sick as some others. Long COVID is a term to describe the effects of COVID-19 that continue for weeks or months beyond the initial illness. In fact, we have no idea how long, right? The disease has been around long enough. The health watchdog NICE defines long COVID as lasting for more than 12 weeks, although some other people consider symptoms that last more than 8 weeks to be long COVID. More details of how many people are affected by long COVID are still emerging, but research suggests around 1 in 5 people who test positive for COVID-19 have symptoms for 5 weeks or longer. For around 1 in 10 people, they last 12 weeks or longer. So 10% of people could have symptoms that go well beyond 12 weeks. And if you look at the overall infected rate, so if you could just go to the official numbers, 130 million, that's 13 million people that could potentially have long-term detrimental effects here. If you go by the unofficial figures, it's 500 million, which makes 50 million people. That's the population of, close to the population of Great Britain, I think, 50 million, that could have long-term health effects. In the initial acute phase of the illness, severe COVID-19 can cause pneumonia and respiratory failure, which can result in permanent damage and scarring to the lungs. But COVID-19 is not only a lung illness. It can cause other life-changing complications, in particular because it can increase the risk of blood clots. It can lead to deep vein thrombosis, heart attacks, and stroke. Less commonly, it can cause heart muscle inflammation and heart rhythm disturbances, such as atrial fibrillation. This isn't specific for coronavirus, for example. Damage to the heart is also known to happen in severe flu. What are the symptoms of long COVID? Most people who had symptoms recovered quickly and were able to resume their normal lives after a few days. But for some, the effects of the virus can last for months or weeks. This has been known as the long COVID. For some, it can seem like a cycle of improving and then getting worse again. These long-term effects aren't only amongst those who needed to go to hospital, or even who felt seriously unwell when they first caught the virus. So like I said, you don't have to get really, really sick to get long COVID, okay? So don't think long COVID is only for those who had a really severe case of coronavirus, right? Lasting symptoms of coronavirus can include the following. And it sounds a lot like a chronic fatigue syndrome, to be honest with you, but these are the symptoms. Fatigue, breathlessness, anxiety and depression, palpitations, chest pains, joint or muscle pain, not being able to think straight or focus, like some kind of brain fog. And to be honest with you, Morgelson's disease comes into mind here as well. So how long does it take to recover from long COVID? Unfortunately, there's currently no way to predict how long recovery from long COVID will take. It's important to note that this isn't unique to COVID-19. Other viral illnesses also have lasting effects. Experience from other viruses suggests that most symptoms should go within 3 months, while tiredness may last up to 6 months. But that may not apply to everyone. I had a friend who some time ago contracted Ross River virus, and he's still suffering from this. This was years ago, and it comes back in bouts. Ross River virus. So I guess it's a little bit. I think it's a little bit like malaria, you know. But it does cause, you know. I think joint aches and extreme fatigue, you know, things like that. And yeah, that like I said, he still suffers from effects of that particular disease. What is the link between long COVID and postural tachycardia syndrome? There's some emerging evidence that in some people, long COVID symptoms could be caused by a condition known as postural tachycardia syndrome or postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, POTS. This condition can cause dizziness when standing and can be triggered by an infection. Symptoms can also include a fast heart rate, palpitations, feeling faint, headache, fatigue, brain fog, and blurred vision. Here's a little side note from me. Postural tachycardia syndrome, or POTS, is a condition that causes an increase in your heart rate after sitting or standing. It often makes people feel dizzy and sweaty and can sometimes even cause them to faint. POTS is caused by a problem in the autonomic nervous system, which regulates the functions of your organs, in this case your heart and brain. Normally, when you sit or stand, your body recognizes that it needs to alter your heart rate and blood pressure so your heart and brain get enough blood. For reasons we don't yet understand, this doesn't happen in people with POTS. So the body tries to compensate by producing more of a hormone called noradrenaline. This makes your heart beat rapidly to try and get more blood to the brain. Okay, so that's what postural tachycardia syndrome is. Researchers in Sweden wrote up 3 case studies of people who had continuing symptoms following COVID-19 infection, which were diagnosed as POTS. POTS happens because your body's ways of avoiding a drop in blood pressure when you stand up aren't working properly. Normally, when you stand up, gravity makes sure some of your blood flow downward, which can cause a fall in blood pressure. So your body responds by narrowing your blood vessels and slightly increasing your heart rate in order to prevent fall in blood pressure. But if you have POTS, these automatic changes don't happen. Okay, and like I said, the supply of blood to your heart and brain drops, and your heart starts beating faster to compensate. While there's no cure for POTS, it can be managed by diet, exercise, and medication. And the researchers say it is important to get an accurate diagnosis so patients can be treated and advised on how to manage their symptoms. If this sounds like your symptoms after having COVID-19, you could ask your doctor if you can be referred for tests. And here are some tips for managing your symptoms. Because look, again, you know, we're trying to help people with this show. So if you're experiencing any of this is what you could do to manage your fatigue and breathlessness, right? Pace yourself, plan what you're going to do, and don't overexert yourself. Try to Break tasks which feel difficult down into smaller chunks and alternate easier and harder activities. Consider the best time of the day to do certain activities based on your energy levels. Frequent short rests are better than a few longer ones, so rest before you become exhausted. Don't stop doing things that make you feel breathless. If you stop using your muscles, they get weaker, which can make you more breathless when you try to use them in the future. Try to gradually increase the amount of exercise you do. Try going for short walks or doing simple strength exercise and build up from there. And finally, if you use a walking stick or a frame, lean forward on it when you feel breathless. A couple other tips here as well. Boost your mood and stay on top of your mental health. Be kind to yourself during your recovery. Be prepared that some days will be worse than others. Connecting with other people can help you feel happier. Make sure to reach out to family and friends. Having a daily routine can be good for your mood and sense of stability. Stay active. Continuing to move will help release endorphins and improve your mood. Now, here's some tips for thinking or memory problems, the brain fog we talked about earlier. Make notes to help you remember things, whether it's in work meetings or medical appointments. Try to reduce distractions. It can help to make a clear plan before approaching any new or complicated problem or situation. Break it down into steps and keep checking your plans as you follow it. And then there's a final advice here around relieving joint or muscle pain. Flexibility exercises like stretches, yoga, or Tai Chi, and even strength exercises like climbing stairs, lifting weights, and working with resistance bands can be useful. But check with your doctor before starting any new exercise regime. And this was taken from from www.bhf.org.uk. It's a health website in the UK to hopefully, give people some pointers as to how they can deal with the effects of long COVID. Now, then I did some more digging and I found more detailed long-term effects. This is from the Mayo Clinic staff. And what the preamble here is that the virus can damage the lungs, heart, and brain, which increases the risk of long-term health problems. And this is the article now. Most people who have coronavirus disease 2019, COVID-19, recover completely within a few weeks. But some people, even those who had mild versions of the disease, continue to experience symptoms after the initial recovery. These people are sometimes described as having long COVID or long COVID-19. Older people and people with many serious medical conditions are the most likely to experience lingering COVID-19 symptoms, but even young, otherwise healthy people can feel unwell for weeks or months after the infection. The most common signs, as we said earlier, are fatigue, shortness of breath, cough, joint pain, and chest pain. Other long-term signs and symptoms may include, this is more detailed here, muscle pain or headache, fast or pounding heartbeat, loss of smell or taste, memory, concentration, or sleep problems, rash or hair loss. Organ damage caused by COVID-19. Although COVID-19 is seen as a disease that primarily affects the lungs, it can damage many other organs as well. This organ damage may increase the risk of long-term health problems. Organs that may be affected are the heart. Imaging tests taken months after recovery from COVID-19 have shown lasting damage to the heart muscle, even in people who experienced only mild COVID-19 symptoms. This may increase the risk of heart failure or other heart complications in the future. Lungs. The type of pneumonia often associated with COVID-19 can cause long-standing damage to the tiny air sacs, the alveoli in the lungs. The resulting scar tissue can lead to long-term breathing problems. Brain. Even in young people, COVID-19 can cause strokes, seizures, and Guillain-Barré syndrome, a condition that causes temporary paralysis. COVID-19 may also increase the risk of developing Parkinson's disease and Alzheimer's disease. Blood clots and blood vessel problems. COVID-19 can make blood cells more likely to clump up and form clots. While large clots can cause heart attacks and strokes, much of the heart damage caused by COVID-19 is believed to stem from very small clots that block tiny blood vessels, the capillaries, in the heart muscle. Other parts of the body affected by blood clots include the lungs, legs, liver, and kidneys. COVID-19 can also weaken blood vessels and cause them to leak, which contributes to potentially long-lasting problems with the liver and kidneys. Problems with mood and fatigue. People who have severe symptoms of COVID-19 often have to be treated in a hospital's intensive care unit with mechanical assistance, such as ventilators, to breathe. Simply surviving this experience can make a person more likely to later develop post-traumatic stress syndrome, depression, and anxiety. Because it's difficult to predict long-term outcomes from the new COVID-19 virus, scientists are looking at the long-term effects seen in related viruses, such as the virus that caused severe acute respiratory syndrome, SARS. Many people who have recovered from SARS have gone on to develop chronic fatigue syndrome, a complex disorder characterized by extreme fatigue that worsens with physical or mental activity, but doesn't improve with rest. The same may be true for people who have had COVID-19. Many long-term COVID-19 effects are still unknown. Again, this is from the Mayo Clinic, www.mayoclinic.org. Much is still unknown about how COVID-19 will affect people over time. However, researchers recommend that doctors closely monitor people who have had COVID-19 to see how their organs are functioning after recovery. Many large medical centers are opening specialized clinics to provide care for people who have persistent symptoms or related illnesses after they recover from COVID-19. It's important to remember that most people who have COVID-19 recover quickly, but the potentially long-lasting problems from COVID-19 make it even more important to reduce the spread of the disease by following precautions such as wearing masks, avoiding crowds, and keeping hands clean, etc., etc. So that's pretty dire. There's another article I want to share with you. It's called "The Tragedy of Long COVID." It was posted October 15, 2020, and it was updated on March the 1st, 2021. It was written by Anthony Komarov, MD, Editor-in-Chief, Harvard Health Letter. Suppose you are suddenly stricken with COVID-19. You become very ill for several weeks. On awakening every morning, you wonder if this day might be your last. And then you begin to turn the corner. Every day, your worst symptoms, the fever, the terrible cough, the breathlessness, get a little better. You're winning, beating a life-threatening disease, and you no longer wonder if each day might be your last. In another week or two, you'll be your old self. But weeks pass, and while the worst symptoms are gone, you're not your old self, not even close. You can't meet your responsibilities at home or at work, no energy. Even routine physical exertion like vacuuming leaves you feeling exhausted. You ache all over. You're having trouble concentrating on anything, even watching TV. You're unusually forgetful. You stumble over simple calculations. Your brain feels like it's in a fog. Your doctor congratulates you. The virus can no longer be detected in your system. That means you should be feeling fine, but you're not feeling fine. The doctor suggests that maybe the terrible experience of being ill with COVID-19 has left you a little depressed or experiencing a little PTSD. Maybe some psychiatric treatment would help, since there's nothing wrong with you physically. You try the treatment and it doesn't help. How common are lingering COVID symptoms? Tens of thousands of people in the United States have lingering illnesses following COVID-19. In the US, we call them post-COVID long haulers. Currently, the condition they are suffering from is known as long COVID, although other names are being proposed. Published studies, and there are links here in the show notes I'll publish on the website, and surveys conducted by patient groups indicate that 50 to 80% of patients continue to have bothersome symptoms 3 months after the onset of COVID-19, even after tests no longer detect viruses within their body. So this is much higher than the percentage mentioned in the other articles, which was around 10%. 50 to 80% of the patients continue to have bothersome symptoms 3 months after the onset of COVID-19, even after tests no longer detect the virus in their body. 50 to 80%. Is long COVID the same as chronic fatigue syndrome? That's a good question. Dr. Anthony Fauci, director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, has speculated that long COVID likely is the same or very similar to myalgic encephalomyelitis or chronic fatigue syndrome. ME/CFS can be triggered by other infectious illnesses such as mononucleosis, Lyme disease, or severe acute respiratory syndrome, SARS, another coronavirus disease. Before the pandemic, the National Academy of Medicine estimated that as many as 2.5 million people in the US are living with ME/CFS. The author recently published an article in the journal Frontiers in Medicine indicating that the pandemic could well double that number in the next year. So instead of having 2.5 million, there will be 5 million people. that will experience this. Who is most likely to become a long COVID sufferer? Currently, we can't accurately predict who will become a long hauler. As an article in Science notes, people only mildly affected by COVID-19 still can have lingering symptoms, and people who were severely ill can be back to normal 2 months later. However, continued symptoms are more likely to occur in people over the age of 50, people with 2 or 3 chronic illnesses, and possibly people who became very ill with COVID-19. What might cause the symptoms that plague long haulers? Research is underway to test several theories, and this is research underway right now, everybody. People who have ME/CFS and possibly people with long COVID may have one or more of these abnormalities. An ongoing level of inflammation in the brain, an autoimmune condition in which the body makes antibodies that attack the brain, decreased blood flow to the brain due to abnormalities of the autonomic nervous system, difficulty making enough energy molecules to satisfy the needs of the brain and body. This is the bottom line. How many people may develop long COVID? We can only guess. By late February 2021, almost 30 million Americans were confirmed to have been infected by the virus. Probably many more were never diagnosed. Early studies indicate that 1 in 10 people with COVID-19 may develop long COVID that lasts at least a year. Ultimately, how long these illnesses last remains to be determined. For this and many other reasons, the strain on the American healthcare system and economy, and this goes not just for America, but for any healthcare system globally, will not end soon. The strain will not end soon. Fortunately, the NIH and CDC have committed major support for research on long COVID. In the US and around the world, planning is underway to develop centers dedicated to research on long COVID and caring for those who have it. Virtually every health professional this author knows believes that the pandemic in the US could and should have been better controlled than it has been. Bad mistakes rarely lead to only temporary damage. And that's really the bottom line here as well. So we have SARS-CoV-2. It does what it does. It has been doing it now for over a year. It shows no sign of slowing down, in spite of the vaccination efforts that are underway. The vaccinations themselves might prove difficult, in the populations. Then we've got the symptoms such as long COVID, where you have lingering chronic fatigue-like syndromes that can't be explained yet. We don't know why it happens. What I'm seeing is a population that is going to be massively depleted. Not in numbers. I mean, COVID, this disease doesn't kill large numbers of people, but it does something else, right? It damages people where they can no longer function. It damages the economy. It damages our way of life. The travel we've all got used to, the transportation, the global markets, all of that, in my opinion, is teetering on the edge of collapse. It doesn't take much to bring this house of cards down. And this particular pandemic is certainly doing a great job of scaring the population into submission. There's this one aspect which is really worrying, and I'm going to share this with you because it's important. Because I don't think that this disease was designed to kill large numbers of people. Incapacitate, sure, and then make less likely to put up any resistance, absolutely. Because if you're chronically fatigued, you're not going to put up much of a fight if people come for you, right? Now, what's really worrying is that there are 2 studies, and I think I only have time to share one, but next week I'm going to start here again. There's study 1, which was published January 29, 2021, so a couple of months ago. COVID-19 reduces fertility in men, study suggests. COVID-19 may negatively affect sperm quality and reduce fertility in men, and the magnitude of that effect may depend on the severity of the disease, researchers reported. Little is known about the virus-host interaction of COVID-19 in sperm cells. Behzad Hajizadeh Maleki, a doctoral student and research assistant in the Department of Psychology and Sports Science at Justus Liebig University in Germany, and Bakhtiar Tatibian, a PhD of the Physical Education and Sports Science Department at Urmia University in Iran, wrote in the journal Reproduction. We are the first to address the connection between changes in multiple seminal biomarkers and reproductive function in male patients recovering from COVID-19, they said. 𝐫𝐞𝐯𝐨𝐥𝐮𝐭𝐢𝐨𝐧 conducted a prospective longitudinal cohort study of 84 men with laboratory-confirmed COVID-19 and 105 men without the disease in Iran. The researchers analyzed changes in angiotensin-converting enzyme 2, which is ACE2 activity, markers of inflammation and oxidative stress, apoptotic variables, and semen quality, all of which were evaluated at 10-day intervals for up to 60 days. Most of the men in the study were in their 30s and differed substantially in body weight, body fat percent, and BMI, according to the researchers. Among those with COVID-19, all but one had either a moderate, severe, or critical form of the disease. A urology expert confirmed that all the men were fertile in the study. Men with COVID-19 were treated with corticosteroids and/or antiviral therapies. The researchers reported that at baseline and during subsequent follow-ups, the COVID-19 group showed significantly higher levels of seminal plasma ACE2 enzyme, as well as higher levels of both pro- and anti-inflammatory cytokines in sperm, including interleukin, 1 beta, IL-6, IL-8, IL-10, transforming growth factor, TGF beta, tumor necrosis factor alpha, and interference alpha and gamma. They also had higher levels of reactive oxygen species and lower superoxide dismutase activity compared with healthy controls. The markers of inflammation and oxidative stress in sperm cells of men with COVID-19 were increased by more than 100% compared with controls, according to the researchers. Sperm concentration, this is important, everybody, sperm concentration was reduced by 516%, mobility by 209%, and sperm cell shape was altered by 400%. Although these effects tended to improve over time, representing a transient state of male subfertility, like those with oligoastrothenoterazospermia, the researchers wrote they remain significantly and abnormally higher in the COVID-19 patients, and the magnitude of these changes were also related to the disease severity. In an interview with Helio Primary Care, Hajizadeh Maliki recommended that couples who want to have children should proceed with caution. Female partners of men recovering from the disease should decide not to conceive until a specialist carefully examines and certifies their fertility status, he said. The reason why COVID-19 affects seminal inflammatory mediators is not yet clear, according to the researchers, but they suggested the perturbated immune factors may be just a reflection of general immune response, like in a serum. They acknowledged that antiviral therapies for COVID-19 may have additional harmful consequences on male fertility and that further research is needed. Okay, that's as far as I think I've got time to go today. That's study number 1, and it was the first study of its kind. And I put this here because I said this in the show last week. I don't think that SARS-CoV-2 was designed to kill many people. I mean, of course it has killed millions, but not billions. And I think the more insidious effects of this virus, like long COVID and reduced male fertility, and we're talking about hundreds of percent here in some of the indicative factors here, such as mobility, sperm count, even cell shape. It's quite disturbing. So if we assume for a second that the official number of 130 million is way too low, which is what even official parties state, and it's 4 to 6 times higher. Let's say it's 4 times higher, for argument's sake, which is the lower estimate. That means that in excess of 500 million people are infected with this disease, and it'll keep on going, because even if you have the vaccine, it doesn't stop the infection, right? It doesn't stop the spread necessarily. It'll lessen the symptoms. It won't make you sick, but it'll still make you sick potentially, and you can still infect others. But if you can severely affect the fertility of tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of men around the world, you can affect a massive drop the potential birth rate going forward, right? Over the next 10, 20, 25 years, we could see a massive fall of global birth rates. Again, if this disease isn't reined in, and everybody gets it, everybody is infected, then obviously more people are affected by this reduced fertility, and more people are affected by long COVID and chronic fatigue. So we have a generation now, or a couple generations of people, which will have significant impacts on their life. They will have significant impacts on their ability to start a family. And from a population control perspective, Agenda 21, etc., this is perfect. This is a masterstroke, right? You have a population that's already docile. You give them chronic fatigue, brilliant. Chances are, already people just let things happen, but imagine they have chronic fatigue syndrome on top of it, and you've just reduced the fertility in the general population by a significant factor. Your population control agenda is coming along quite nicely. And not only that, you have avoided catastrophic population control. So let's say overnight the evil elite decides to kill 7 billion people. Society, civilization would collapse. Everything would simply stop. Okay, that's the long and short of it. Would they do it if they had to? I think the answer is absolutely they would. Do they want to? I don't think they want to. I think they've seen what that looks like before in previous extinction cycles. I don't think they want to do that. I think they want to avoid that. They want civilization to keep going for their own comfort levels, if you will, right? So if you have a slowly reducing population, you can manage your downscaling of your society. You can manage it, right? You can have a more planned approach to what people should study, push them into the right professions to make sure that the critical infrastructure, et cetera, services and so forth, are still delivered going forward, right? And the population would be none the wiser, because we don't have a catastrophic collapse of civilization. We just have a massive reduction in headcount, right? That's what this is leading towards. It's a it's not really chemical castration. It's biological castration, if you want to look at it that way. So, and maybe some of the leaders, the world leaders, are in the know, like Bolsonaro in Brazil. Maybe he's one of those that understands what the plan is and he's 100% behind it. Yeah, good. Let's make all the men infertile. Well, not all the men, but a significant number of men. Reduce the population, right? Because there was something that was meant to happen at Uluru in December of 2020, and it did, and we had some insights from the people that went. And I expected that we could all ascend. I expected it could be the great awareness cascade we've been talking about for 10 years, or the rapture if you're a Christian, I don't care what you call it, right? Or ascension. But I think SARS-CoV-2 hit us just at the right time to reduce the frequency level of the planet. It reduced the energy just enough to not let that happen to the vast majority of us. I mean, some of us might still ascend, right? And now we're bringing down the population so it can be controlled better, and we can't reach another level. Now, the number that we came up with using an algorithm based on the Fibonacci sequence was 7.76 billion. 7.76 billion was the number that the population needed to reach for this spontaneous ascension to occur. In our opinion, that's our opinion only, or my opinion. And Dave agrees, I hope. So that's just our opinion, right? But that clearly didn't happen, right? And I think that's, and we actually said this, we have been saying this for a number of years, that the year when we would reach this number, 7.76 billion, would be 2020, right? And lo and behold, at the end of 2019, we have this disease pop up, and the fear level in the global population went through the roof. Right, terrorism, sure, it'll scare people, and school shootings, that'll scare people. But if you put people on lockdown for months on end, if you destroy their economy and their way of life, you prevent them from communing together, coming together as a community, that does some serious damage to your psyche. That does some serious damage to each individual person and to their fear level. Okay? This is, I mean, some parts of Italy had an entire generation wiped out in the first spike. Our way of life is fundamentally different now. Okay, and this is a disease that only, and I put only in inverted commas here, 3% of the people that catch it, right? Now, the actual death toll, I believe, will be revised upwards once we understand all the numbers, all the statistics, once we can do the research and look into it. Oh, and there's the music. Don't go away. Jerba is going to have an awesome roundtable, I'm sure. And this is Listener Fun Radio, so do go ahead and donate if you can. Next week, we are going to be back with Dave, I'm pretty sure, for show number 473. But until then, Shiny Side is signing off for Revolution Radio in Australia. Have a great evening, all.
Thank you for listening to Revolution